What is up, Rotogrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick Six Show, week number 8, almost halfway home. Joining me today, as always, returning champions, Rich Hribar from Sharp Football Analysis, John Daigle from NBC Sports, also a Good Football Show podcast. He's here energetically. What's going on, Daigle? How are things in your world?
Everything's going well. Another week where I wish I would have played Cooper Kupp. Otherwise, though, everything is good on this end.
Yeah. And it's another week where I wish I did not play Robbie Anderson, but those targets, man. Oh, they're
good. Those targets are pretty good.
And he's got an incredible matchup again this week, and he's super cheap. And oh, good Lord. Like we could touch on last week for a second, generally a forward thinking show, but what are your thoughts as far as, Hribar, what do you have for me as far as what happened last week? Feel free to touch on Cooper Kupp. He's always good and he's super expensive, but he justifies that salary every single time. And then, were you with me at least with Robbie Anderson, or were you too smart for that?
I had about 10%, but I'm coming off my best week this season, so I feel good. My quarterback core last week was Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Stafford, and Burrow. So we ran stacks with all those guys. We're looking good. I had more T. Higgins though than Chase, which kept me from like some real banks. But I'm going to justify the prayer yards and say that I was on the right track there. But the Tua stacks got us home, and I ran more Pitts than Ridley on the bring back. So we're looking at we came out ahead last week.
You guys remember when Pitts sucked? Remember I was told Pitts was a bust. You guys remember that? All the way like 3 weeks ago.
It's Twitter. They're usually wrong. You just wait a couple weeks.
And now it's funny because like everyone only tweets about Pitts and Jamar Chase, and I have nothing to say about them. Like, yeah, they're good. I mean, what do you want me to tweet? Yeah, they're both really good.
Is Chase like having the best rookie season ever, or am I being hyperbolic? Is that
it's on the way? It's on the way. We're cooking.
I feel like I'm still curious about betting markets though, since Justin Jefferson literally did have the best rookie season ever, and they still gave the offensive rookie of the year to a quarterback because it's a quarterback award.
But one was good. None of the quarterbacks this year are good.
That's true. Well, Trevor Lawrence he's a little better. He hasn't been elite so far though. I agree.
Yeah, he's been like a typical, like Trevor Lawrence is having like the prototypical like successful rookie season, right? Like it's been looking kind of bad. There's been some rough spots, some promise. Things are fine. Like Herbert broke the dam down last year. So like that's why he won it. I would have had no problem if Jefferson did win it, but when Herbert, a quarterback play that well, like the narrative's always going to get pushed to him.
I also learned from last week that I still think run backs, maybe not overrated is the correct word, but not enough people are asking, why am I running this player back? Not just for game stacks, right? But you need to make sure that you're running back a player because they can answer or like be the best pivot in that range because another player is higher rostered in that range. Like you don't want to run back Tyler Johnson or something like that, just a cheap run back just to have a game stack. In that case, like last week, you could have double stacked the Bucs and just genuinely not played a single Bears player because the run back isn't important in that situation. So just something else to look to as we continue moving on through this long season.
You should look to play good players. I mean,
exactly.
The Bears don't have good players. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, Darnell Mooney is fine, right? Like, but I mean, this offense, we're not attaching ourselves to any more Bears, man. The rest of the way out. maybe Khalil Herbert, but like maybe running back. Yeah, no one throwing the ball.
It was a week. Justin Fields had a season high pass attempts, and Al Robinson came away with a season low target share. Like, I think that tells you all we need to know so far.
But that went exactly like we talked about, man. That Bucs game. I mean, it's unfortunate, because the Bucs D ended up a little chalky, and it got there. But that's exactly. Listen, man, Justin Fields, man. If you want to bring heat on him, he just that internal clock it's not processing, man. It's not exactly. It's a wind up. It's definitely not a Rolex.
It's a Casio.
Yeah.
Daigle, I read one of your articles you popped out there in the Twitter machine, and it was so crazy to see it, but it's fully justified. You were talking about Allen Robinson being a drop. And it's he hasn't had one good week, I don't think, the entire season. Was he wide receiver? You know, you guys both are really, really sharp, obviously, in season-long stuff. Like wide receiver 60 or something like that. He's just been dreadful. And I don't know if is that on him, but his situation is not good.
He hasn't had a single finish inside the top 46 wide receivers yet this year. And on a week last week, that 18 of the top 50 receivers were either injured or on bye. Robinson still finished as the wide receiver 69 overall. It was rock bottom. It was pretty disastrous.
Not nice. Yeah, that's just horrendous. If this is your first time checking out the NFL Pick Six show, where have you been? It's week 8. This is how the show works. We focus on the main slate, 12 games. Only 2 teams on bye this week. No Baltimore, no Vegas talk. The Thursday night game, Green Bay, Arizona, not really going to focus on that. As much as we want to, we're not going to talk about Dallas and Minnesota, the Sunday night game. And, of course, the Monday night game, the Giants and Kansas City, not talking about. Did you guys have any – I'm kind of thankful that Kansas City's not in the main slate because they keep costing me American dollars. It's not going well for your boy over here. Hribar, do you have general thoughts as far as what's wrong with Kansas City? Because I'm glad I don't have to mess with it. It's just one of those things where I just can scratch them off and we'll figure it out next week.
Yeah, but part of it is definitely a relief that they're not on the main slate. Just a little bit of pressing, not taking what the defense is given to them, for making mistakes. Typically in the NFL, if you turn the ball over, you're going to have a hard time winning, and they lead the NFL in turnovers. And, a lot of teams, listen, Patrick Mahomes is getting blitzed at the lowest rate in the NFL, just 13% of his dropbacks. Teams are sitting back in those 2 high safety shells, and they're just pressing, trying to make too many plays, So, they just got to start taking what the defense gives them. I have the utmost confidence in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, though. I definitely am not someone that the world is burning. Maybe for real football, maybe this really does hurt their playoff chances, but I do believe that the Chiefs will be productive over the course of the season.
You got anything to add there, Daigle?
Like you, I'm glad they're not on the slate, so I don't have to double stack Mahomes and then late swap off Darrell Henderson and everyone again. That's pretty much what I'm thankful for.
That worked out, though. That worked out last week.
It somewhat worked out.
You know what? I
also didn't realize Hopkins and James Conner were going to be on FanDuel mid stakes, high stakes. They were over 15%. They were pretty popular. So I pretty much slate swapped on other high roster players. Did not work out.
I definitely didn't factor in the Stafford narrative enough. So in the red zone last week, the Rams ran 12 red zone plays. They called 11 passes out of 12. Everyone was wondering how Darrell didn't get there. They were letting Stafford get his back on the Lions.
when we get to positional plays, let's do it again. Let's talk about the Rams again.
Yeah, baby. Listen, we got to run Darrell back this week.
Oh yeah.
He's so cheap on DK. This is how the show goes. If this is your first time, we feature 3 games, break it down from all sorts of directions. Then we kind of run it back and give our favorite plays position by position of players that were not on the 3 games that we did feature. The first game we're featuring here, Daigle, Tennessee at Indianapolis. 51 is the total. It's the highest total on the board. It's weird because it's the highest total on the board, but it's also the game that's projected to have the fewest amount of plays, which is just, you don't see that too often. But this is what we have. And it's not a huge discrepancy. It's 120 or so, as opposed to at the bottom, 133, 132 at the top. So Henry, is he a focal point once again, as far as this slate?
Henry's always a focal point, and it just comes down to what you want to do. 11K Derrick Henry didn't even come close to getting there, despite getting 30 touches again last week. But now FanDuel has kindly reduced his price to only 10.5. So again, you can go there if you want. Last week, I was really just waiting to see where his ownership was going to end up at, because I wanted to play 7-8% Derrick Henry, but he didn't end up getting there, which is fine. I played Darrell Williams instead, but it turns out whenever you play the starting running back on a team, you expect to score 35 points and they score 3 points. It doesn't matter anyway, so who cares? Nonetheless, another great spot for Derrick Henry, but also a good spot for the Titans passing game, because what we're seeing now is an ode to last year. It's almost like they purposely started running the ball so heavily, not only because that's their identity, but trying to at least believe running the ball is going to set up their play action game. And what happened was the first month of the season, they ran 25% of their dropbacks from play action. And now in their last 3 games, upped at 10%, all the way to 35.3% play action rate. And Tannehill, just like last year, when Tannehill averaged 9.7 yards per attempt from play action and only 7 yards per attempt without it, is averaging 10.4 yards per attempt from play action this year and only 6.5 yards per attempt without it. A massive digression. So overall, just with the Titans passing game suddenly clicking as well, I think you have both your leverage spots, and you can see where ownership comes in at, because I do believe, Rich will talk about the Colts side in a bit, but I believe we're going to get a lot of points scored in this game. And so you can go either Henry or Tannehill in the passing game.
I ran a bunch of optimals before the show, as I'm one to do, and it's always, we have to note, people listen to us. Some people listen live, but most listen to, Thursday morning or something like that. This is Wednesday night and things change. But as of right now, 0% of lineups, Derrick Henry is popping in as far as optimals on both FanDuel and DK. Things change as the week progresses, but just kind of sort of something interesting. Doesn't mean he's not going to be owned, because, raw points matter too. Jump in here, Reeves, as far as your thought on Tennessee, whatever you want to elaborate on, and then, feel free to jump over to the Colts.
Yeah, we've got some coaches that get over the hurdle that you don't have to run the ball to run play action. The next hurdle now is to get them to run play action in negative game script. That's what's happened to Tennessee. And it's apt to happen to all teams. Like, they just abandon play action when it's time to, chase points on the scoreboard. And when you're in games, you can run more play action. I mean, I would love to see, Ben Baldwin or one of the R guys or Python guys, go and look at that, if you can, how effective play action is, trailing how often teams do it. The other thing too is that Tannehill's just been protected a little better too. He's been sacked on just one of his past 59 dropbacks the past 2 weeks. After he was sacked on 9.9% of his dropbacks, and the Colts are dead last in the NFL in pressure rate. They're significantly, you have a wide gap in EPA allowed per play versus the run in the past. They're actually number one in EPA per play against the run. And when these teams played earlier in the season, they at least made Derrick Henry work for it. He got to 113 yards, but he had to get a ton of touches, 28 carries to get those 113 yards. So at least made him work for it. In that game. But in that game, Tannehill had his highest scoring fantasy game of the year. He threw 3 touchdowns. Arthur Juan only played 15 snaps, and Julio Jones only played 50% of snaps in that game. So he did it throwing to the gaggle of vagabonds of Chester Rogers and Nick Westbrook-Ikeen. I can't even remember who he threw the other touchdown pass to in that game. Maybe Jerry McNichols. I forget. But, so we're going to see, Tennessee's going to run the football. That's what they do on everybody. And the big dog can get over anybody. But this is a game where it sets up for Tannehill to kind of still continue to throw the football and throw the football well. And we saw, Arthur Juan's been playing well the last 6 quarters. We kind of got a glimpse of what he could do, the ceiling now, and we feel good about him moving forward. Julio at least was out there last week. He played just 43% of the snaps, but, was able to get out there, and just having his presence is at least a contribution to the offense compared to what's behind him on the roster. So yeah, I do like this passing game. And then we could talk about the run backs on the other side, but I do like the Tannehill, Arthur Juan run back, even without the element of it feeling like it's point chasing.
What do you have as far as the Colts, as far as your run backs? Taylor, I guess they have figured it out. It took them like 7 weeks. Like, hey, maybe we should give this guy that got the ball a little bit more. He's clearly our best running back. Hilton, I think we're expecting Hilton back this week. How much does that muck up a guy like Pittman, who I think is pretty talented as well too, but we saw at least in the one game they played together, I don't think he did particularly well. Is that of any concern? How does that change things as far as the receivers on the Indianapolis side?
I think the biggest problem from 2 weeks ago when Hilton played is that they just boat raced the Texans. I mean, Wentz only threw 20 passes. Pittman does have a declining target share from the previous week in each of his past 5 games, but he's still running a route on 96% of the team dropbacks. That's 6th among all receivers in the NFL. And in that game, he ran way more routes than T.Y. Hilton as well. So with the way he's playing still, I still feel good about him, especially against this Tennessee defense that, is 28th in yards per target to opposing wide receivers, 24th in points allowed per target, barring, even how the success they had last week against Kansas City. I still am not putting stock in that this is a rejuvenated or a defense that I'm scared of and willing to avoid now. So I do like Pittman. And then, like you said, Jonathan Taylor is kind of in the zone of where we thought he would be kind of starting the year after the slow box. They got the offensive line is getting healthy. Braden Smith looks like he's going to play this week. Big Quentin Nelson came back last week. So it's all kind of coming together for the Colts at the right time here.
And what we've seen also is that Jonathan Taylor also at least 15 touches in 4 consecutive games, as Marlon Mack is really only taken away from Nyheim Hines, not Taylor. They're still keeping Taylor out there, in particular the past 2 games in the passing game as well, with a route on 60% of Carson Wentz's dropbacks. And that's why I think Wentz and the Colts can respond on offense here, because Tennessee was pasted by Zach Wilson for nearly 300 yards. Trevor Lawrence also had 275 yards and also 7 carries for a rushing score. And then Josh Allen for 353 yards and multiple touchdowns before the Chiefs averaged just 4.1. Was it 4.9? 4.9 yards per play last week, and whatever the hell that was, with 3 turnovers against the Titans. And so, although this matchup is a rewind, it's really not from week 2, since Carson Wentz has thrown multiple touchdowns and averaged over 3 carries per game in every game since these two teams last played. Also, the Colts in that first game, they did score 25 points and still had 2 turnovers inside Tennessee's 30-yard line. So points left on the board too. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good spot for the passing game overall.
You guys got anything else as far as this game?
One little sneaky thing I just want to add is that the Colts did run a season high rate of 12 personnel with more 2 tight end sets without T.Y. Hilton last week. So we'll see what happens with T.Y. Hilton. Jack Doyle has run 49 routes to Mo Alley Cox's 35 in the last 3 games. But Cox, as the just more talented player, has seen 10 targets to Doyle's 3 in that span. And so if we're going to see more usage for Mo Alley Cox and more pass attempts, that's a pretty sneaky, cheapy tight end on DraftKings, for instance.
You got anything, Hribar, or move it on?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Do you have a stat in your pocket you're going to unleash at some point in this game? It's somehow going to trump. It's going to top last week's Hunter Renfrow double move. Whatever you busted out on us, because the people are demanding it. It was very exciting.
I mean, you can't put that kind of pressure. You got to let those things happen organically.
Fair enough. Maybe we'll have something for the people in the Miami Buffalo game. I think this is our very first time. It took us 8 weeks. We're going to feature the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins in Buffalo, 49.5 is the total. They're currently 13.5 point dogs. Best quarterback on the slate from a raw point perspective is Josh Allen. Hribar, is he can we justify? Is he somebody we're going to try to jam in our lineups? 31.5 as far as the team total here against Miami, and again, salary cap concerns, and who knows how it's going to go down as far as the cap being a little bit looser as the week progresses if injuries sort of kind of fall our way. How much do you feel like you have to have Josh Allen?
I mean, the way this slate plays out, no Kyler, Lamar's on bye, Dak's on Sunday night, Mahomes is on Monday night. He's kind of that guy that's up there, right? Like, because we talk about the dual threat archetypes, the guys that can have a huge passing game and give you rushing production. He's kind of in his own orbit this week, the way it's played out. So, I mean, I do think he'll be really popular, and at least he's really expensive if you want to go a different direction. But yeah, I do think it's warranted. I mean, Miami is, pretty rough against the pass. We know they're gonna keep blitzing, right? Like, this is what Miami does. They're 4th in the NFL in blitz rate, and they blitzed Josh Allen on 34% of his dropbacks in week 2. And Allen struggled in that game against the blitz. He was 4 of 12 against the blitz in that game, 4.7 yards per pass attempt. Since that game, Buffalo has kind of corrected, because remember, that was week 2, and Josh Allen, remember how he started the year. He struggled against pressure early in the season, but since that game, they've kind of corrected some things against the blitz since then. He's 22 of 33 passing, 8.6 yards per pass attempt. He's handled pressure just a lot better. Miami's still 31st in the NFL in passing points allowed per game to opposing passers. We've seen, Matt Ryan have no trouble, hitting Russell Gage for wide open 50-yard touchdowns against them last week. So, I mean, yeah, it feels just like a spot. Yeah, it's easy to say. I don't think we need really a lot of support for Josh Allen, and I think he stands out this week because of just the archetype he is compared to the field of passers.
I'm just taking a peek look at the salaries on FanDuel. I don't know if we've ever seen it this condensed. Steph Diggs is 7'3". Manny Sanders at 6'7". Beasley at 6'1". Like, typically the gap is much wider from Diggs to the second guy to the third guy. I mean, Diggs hasn't exactly had like a Diggs-like season, right? But still, that's kind of stands out, doesn't it? That seems peculiar. Is that just
Diggs is still 13th in the league in targets. He just scored 2 touchdowns. That's really what's happening here. I will say also, I'm curious to see what happens, because maybe without Dawson Knox, the league's best tight end, they just throw in Tommy Sweeney, who I believe is still the only tight end on their active roster right now. But also what we could see after we saw Cole Beasley have his highest target share since week 3, 19% before the bye, and run the most routes he's run on Josh Allen's dropback since week 1, is that they just run more 11 personnel, and they throw Beasley out there as well. So I think Beasley's a pretty good option as well if you're looking to double stack Allen with Diggs.
I imagine we'll see a lot of 10 personnel here. I imagine the they'll dust off Gabe Davis a little bit for this game.
Is that 4 wide? What's 10 personnel? 4 wide?
Yeah. With Dawson Knox being sidelined.
That's what I figured they would do.
Just count from the backfield. So 1 is the 1 running back, and then 0 is 0 tight ends. Thus 4 wide receivers.
Oh, wow.
10 personnel.
I didn't know that little cheat code. That makes sense. According to our RG page, there's a person named Cahill Waring. That's a potential second tight end. I don't know who that is.
I actually didn't know he was on Buffalo. I really didn't know.
I just found out John Brown was on the Broncos.
Well, he actually got cut this week, so he's not on the Broncos anymore.
Yeah. Well, he's not now. I just found out he was on team. He's not on it anymore.
Yeah, he was active last week.
Daigle, what do you have for me as far as the Bills here, Daigle? Do we take a dart as far as what are these running backs under the presumption that maybe they're going to be mopping up and what may be a blowout? And the Bills running back situation is never really fun to kind of dissect. Yeah, and your favorite receiver? Who's your favorite receiver to pair with Allen when you consider the asking price?
Well, before the bye, they basically split touches and also both ran 24 routes. So the exact same usage for both. Of course, in this game, even though Allen did struggle with 179 yards, the Bills still scored 35 points. Like they still routed the Dolphins in a shutout. And so you would think you still need at least some players here. Having said that, I do really believe Beasley has an incredibly high floor, especially on DraftKings among all their receivers. So if I play Allen, I'll probably be looking to play him with Diggs and then one of Beasley or Davis, maybe even Davis and Beasley. Who knows? Maybe we can get a little creative here. But overall, yeah, I still love Beasley, especially for his salary. And then maybe not. I don't know. But there is a reason to believe like the Dolphins may be able to push back. Like remember Tua also got injured in week 2. So like we didn't really get to see him play against the Bills. And what they've done over the last 2 games, the Dolphins, is basically just abandon the run and allowing Tua to throw at a top 10 rate in neutral game script, as well as average 43 half pass attempts per game, also averaging 3.5 carries per game in those last 2 contests. So Bills, of course, are still one of the top defenses in EPA per drop back, and they really didn't even struggle against Ryan Tannehill. That was more ground game and efficiency that allowed the Titans to win. Also mistakes in that situation as well. But overall, I think Tua may be able to have a little bit of success here. At least he'll get the passing volume.
Gabe Davis, by the way, this could be useful. 3.3K on DK, just $300 above the floor. He's basically a punt on FanDuel too. But like my general thought is like the 3K guy in DK is more useful than the 4.5, like 4.7, 5K guy in FanDuel. Just kind of when it comes down to lineup building. Do you guys happen to see the quote today from Tua? Did anybody catch this? They asked him about like the trade rumors, right? And here's his exact quote. I'm just quoting Tua. Maybe Hribar, you can tell me what he's saying by this. I don't not feel wanted.
The intentional double negative.
What does that mean? I don't know.
I don't know, man. He seems like a pretty upbeat guy still, though. So hey, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, we're assuming he doesn't get traded. We're assuming he's a starting quarterback.
Well, I don't think he's going to be part of the trade regardless. If it does happen,
they bring somebody in and then they just kind of sit with him. He's the number 2, like, or maybe you're 1 and 1A, and we'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone knows what's going on with Deshaun Watson. So
yeah, I assume that's the situation.
But I don't know if the Texans even want a quarterback in return. So I mean, I don't know. So I don't know how it really plays out. But
they want to keep losing, right?
I mean, they have to. That has to be a goal.
Yeah.
Although they're gonna play Tyrod though. So
yeah, is he gonna play this week? Because he's 4-9 on DK. Like, yeah, he's 4-9. He's playing. Like that's official. He's on track.
Yeah, that's actually what makes the Rams a little interesting, because like Tyro was averaging 9.5 yards per attempt before he left. They were actually moving the ball with him somewhat. So, if we get a little pushback against the Rams, that's some reason to play the Rams passing game with complete confidence.
I don't even want to tell you the quarterback that was popping on DK and optimals on a Wednesday night, but it's right. Can I
guess?
Go ahead, take a guess.
Since you made it sound ugly, is it Teddy Bridgewater?
No, I was going to say worse, but it's in the same tier.
It's got to be Sam Darnold.
It's not Sam Darnold. 63% of optimals. This is as of Wednesday night and whatever. He's very cheap. He's in a dome. I'll give you that. Wait,
he's in a dome?
Yeah, he's in a dome.
I don't know.
He was in a revenge game last week that didn't really work out for him. Revenge versus coach. Jared Goff.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Oh, Jared Goff.
Yeah.
We're not playing Jared Goff.
I don't think we are either.
We're just not going to have the optimal lineup then.
Yeah. I mean, again, this stuff changes and whatever. I just thought it was sort of interesting. When I run it through, I'm like, oh no, I made that face. But all right. So Tua, especially if we get Parker out this week, and I guess right now he's kind of questionable. Did they say he was week to week last week or whatever it is? We'll see. Stay tuned on that. If he's out, Hribar, like I love the pairing here with Gesicki, who's essentially playing wide receiver. Waddle is in play too, and especially in the comeback, assuming they're going to be chucking a good bit. I'm in, or play Allen with like at least one of Gesicki or Waddle. That's a nice little, game stack as well. What are your thoughts as far as Tua, and who's your favorite receiver to pair him with?
Yeah, the Dolphin side is a little tricky because the pass volume's been there, but also the production came against the Jaguars and Falcons. Yeah. When these two teams played earlier in the year, the Bills pressured Miami quarterbacks on 60% of their dropbacks. Like that's just an absolute absurd number. And that's why Tua got knocked out of that game early in the game. Brissett could have been sacked like a dozen more times in that game and just shed tacklers off because he's so big. So it's very interesting. Gesicki's been hot, but he has just one tight end one game in 7 career games against the Bills, and that game came with Matt Milano out of the lineup. Waddle is completely fine, but now the pricing is starting to come up because the ownership's been high the past 2 weeks, and the targets have been there. Definitely, as a low ADOT guy, fits right into one, giving up pressure, and then opposing passers have just a 6.5 yard average depth of target against the Buffalo Bills. That's the second lowest in the NFL. So that does fit for him. So I mean, that's going to be like right in line. If Parker's out, he's going to get jammed a bunch of targets. We know Will Fuller's still out again. I'm not in love. This is one where Daigle said, I don't know if you necessarily have to force the bring back here if you don't want to, but there are options if you do.
Who's your favorite one if you have to take somebody?
I mean, it has to be Waddle by default.
Not Gesicki?
I just explained to you why I would.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to force you to say Gesicki because I like Gesicki.
No, I mean, I have no problem with it. Listen, they're going to have to throw to him. It doesn't matter about the matchup. It's not, it is what it is. Like they're going to throw him the football. And they're going to, and he's a guy that, when he's always covered anyway. It's not like he separates, he plays top shelf, football. Look at the touchdown he had last week. It's covered by 3 guys.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like that's his game. I mean, he's not running away from anybody. So I don't hate it though.
Daigle, tell me you love Gesicki.
Yeah, sure. It's a onesie position where no Waller on the slate, no Kelsey on the slate. So yeah, sure. Why not? Gesicki's probably one of the best options. Maybe it's a week we look to pay down. I also think you can go Myles Gaskin since Malcolm Brown went to IR. Savon Ahmed just doesn't profile as a receiving back. He never has. We've seen him use Gaskin though in that role, in particular last weekend over Malcolm Brown after handling the first 5 snaps, first 4 backfield touches for the Dolphins. Then he went out. Gaskin did see a season high 19 touches, outsnapped Ahmed 46-22 and recorded all 3 running back touches inside the 10-yard line. Also with a 10% target share, and now has at least a 10% target share in 3 consecutive games with at least 4 targets in all 3 of those contests. So if we expect them to be from behind, expect them to be passing a lot, like Gaskin can also be used as a pretty much a receiver in that game and negative game script.
Yeah, we saw him get 10 catches against Tampa just a few weeks back as well too. He crushed that game. All right. Anything else that's worth noting in this game, or shall I move on to our third game? Anybody got anything else, or we're good to go?
No, sounds good.
Tampa at New Orleans. 50 is the total. New Orleans getting 6 points here. Tom Brady is still just crushing souls, just absolutely incredible. Do we know Antonio Brown? Do we know his status just yet?
He's not playing.
Okay, I assume he was not playing this week. And tightens up those targets for sure on the Tampa side. It makes pairing him with 2 dudes a little bit easier. I guess, yeah. Hribar, talk to me about Tom Brady and like just how much do we like him against New Orleans? And New Orleans is just, they're going to run the ball mostly, and the clock's going to be eaten. But like Brady's still going to get his. He doesn't care what the score is. He's a greedy Gus, man. He's in the 1 yard line, a 2 yard line. He's throwing those touchdowns. He wants to rack up as many as possible, and good for him. He wants an MVP, I think. I'm buying into that narrative. Like he wants to be probably the oldest person ever to get MVP. I would imagine so. Talk to me about as far as your thoughts, Brady at New Orleans this week.
Yeah, he leads the NFL with 8 passing touchdowns inside the 5 yard line. Very Aaron Rodgers-esque campaign going on for Tom Brady right now. I mean, last week he threw for 211 yards and under 6 yards per pass attempt, and still threw 4 touchdown passes. And was like upset. Like he said on the ride home, like all he thought about was that they should have scored 50 points in that game. in the plays that they missed on the field. The Saints have been kind of a weird defense this year. They've been really good. They're second in the league in passing points allowed per game. They have had like half of their schedule has been against Mac Jones, Taylor Heineke, and Geno Smith. They also had that week 1 kind of shutdown of Aaron Rodgers, but then they also gave up 305 passing yards to Sam Darnold and 400 passing yards to Daniel Jones. Like kind of a weird resume the Saints have going on. We know their defense is, definitely probably one of the better units in the NFL. Brady was not particularly good in any of the 3 games against the Saints last year. He only threw for 239, 209, and 199. Now you remove Antonio Brown from the picture. He does get Gronk back. He only threw 4 touchdowns in those games too. So, it's a familiar opponent with each other. Obviously now without having Drew Brees in this game, there's a different dynamic going on because Jameis Winston, they're trying to hide Jameis Winston, and they've had to open it up a little bit the past 2 games. And with that, you've seen some of the warts of why they were hiding Jameis Winston. He's completed just 50 and 54% of his passes. Also, Jameis Winston, by far the most under pressure quarterback in the NFL. And under pressure, he's been an abject nightmare. He's 20 of 56 passing under pressure, 4.5 yards per pass attempt compared to 9.1 yards per pass attempt and 73% completion rate when kept clean. Also, the Saints have put him in just ridiculous spots. He has by far the highest rate of pass attempts coming on non-first downs, needing 7 or more yards. Almost 50% of his passes, 47.6% of his pass attempts have come in those situations. So when they run on first down and get 2 yards and then they have to throw, or they're in 3rd and 7 long, they just put him in terrible spots because they're trying to hide him. It's definitely a weird dynamic the Saints have going on. We've seen some cracks in the foundation of when they have to have him throw. So I don't really know what the hell they're going to do. They're probably going to try to hide him again. I keep bringing it up. We talked about the Fields last week. People keep saying the Bucs pass defense is bad. They're only bad because of just raw volume on a per play basis. Like they are really good. It's just if you need like 40 pass attempts to keep getting over on a raw statistics. I don't know if the Saints are going to drop back and be willing to throw it 40 times, just like we talked about with the Bears approach last week.
I'm hearing play Tampa Bay defense and all that. Tampa Bay defense sounds like a really, really strong play. I know it's Jameis Winston revenge game and all that. By the way, I just Googled it. The oldest person to win the NFL MVP, Tom Brady, 2017. So there he goes. He might break his own record, 40 years old when he did that. He was a man. Super incredible. Jump in here, Daigle, as far as your thoughts on the Tampa Bay side, and feel free to jump over to New Orleans, where it is the interesting conundrum where, you can't run the ball on Tampa. New Orleans wants to run the ball because they don't want Winston to be throwing the ball because that's going to be a problem. We saw 31 touches, I believe, last week for Kamara, 10 catches, 11 targets, 20 carries. I might be off by 1 or 2, but you know the deal. He's the offense at this point. Can't guard Mike, still like a week or 2 away. What are your thoughts here as far as this game, Daigle? How's it going to go down?
Yeah, Kamara has 51 of the backfield's 53 total touches in the Saints' last 2 games. But we've also seen them drop back more in their past 2 games. Winston has averaged 32.5 pass attempts in that stint, going back-to-back and season highs in pass attempts, and also averaged 7 carries per game with a little bit of a rushing juice in that span. And so if they are forced to do that against the Bucs, like Rich said, it comes down to, is he going to be under pressure or not? Because despite being good against the blitz this year, and as we know, the Bucs blitz at the league's highest rate, completing 60% of his passes for 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. If the blitz gets there and he's under duress the entire time, it's probably going to be an abject disaster. So overall, I still believe, though, that they're going to feature Kamara, even though they did just trade for Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram, clearly very aware of the playbook, should step in seamlessly, even though this would not be a good spot for Mark Ingram himself. Maybe that takes away overall touches and even passing volume from Kamara. So you would have to hope for overall offensive volume if you're looking at anyone in this game besides Kamara. But overall, yeah, it's just really hard to pinpoint the receivers otherwise. Like everything looks good behind the scenes on paper for Marquez Callaway, except the results so far because he's not that good. Otherwise, like even Kenny Stills, they're trying to get him involved. And we saw in his 1 deep target, he dropped it. And then Traquan Smith was pretty much a nightmare, even almost getting kicked out of the game until he finally got a target in the second half. So overall, that's the really thing here too, is that outside of Kamara, which is easy in a showdown slate, but in a main slate, you can't really stack them with anyone like Winston with anyone.
Stills was like 50% owned on that showdown slate, and that would have changed everything because he was like $200 or $400 on DK.
I had him and Josh Myers, and to see 2 50-yard field goals missed and a drop pass, it was a disaster because that would have been sweet.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I was bummed until I realized 50% of the field had him. So like, I don't know how much that would have changed, but yeah. Oh boy, that was the worst showdown slate I think we've had so far this year. Two of the quarterback managers, just the quarter. What's that the term they use? Quarterback managers.
Well, imagine being the 50% of the field that didn't have Kamara captain. That was even worse for them.
No, go to bed, close the laptop, fire up Curb Your Enthusiasm, the Succession, or something else. You got anything else here on this game, Rich? I don't know. You have any thoughts as far as the Saints' offense or lack thereof? It's hard to get excited. Like Kamara, in theory, is the offense, and yes, they brought over Mark Ingram. Apparently, Brendan Cooks is not happy about that. If you're looking at his tweets, maybe
to be fair, Mark Ingram seems like a really dope teammate. Like he seems like a really great dude.
Yes.
We don't even know if that tweet was about that either. But you know, hey, but hey, I mean, Mark Ingram does seem like a really awesome teammate, though.
Sure. Yeah, maybe Cooks is just trying to get traded too. Like, and I assume why wouldn't he? Like, why wouldn't you trade him also? Like, why not? When's the trade deadline? Like a week away or something?
To be fair, I'm happy if he stays and just continues to accrue like 35% of the targets and like 50% air yards. I'm okay with that too. But you know, this isn't a Brandon Cooks podcast. But you know, hey,
it's about to be in the positional plays, but yeah, not the full time.
Oh no.
But yeah, I mean, listen, Kamara's he's for as great as a game he had Monday night. I mean, people will still see the Bucs, and he'll probably come in lighter than than his ceiling is capable. So I mean, we're talking about 4 p.m. pivots in this game. Like, he's still got to be at least on the board because we're looking at our 4 p.m. games here, and if you're saving salary, we've got Chargers, New England, we got Jacksonville, Seattle, this game, and football team and Broncos. So. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be basically this is where the money, the pivot money is going to be, unless you really want to chase. I think James Robinson is interesting, but hey, whatever. Maybe some of the Chargers guys, but yeah. So I mean, this is where people are going to be trying to pivot to chase because it's the highest game total and you've got the highest salary guys in this game. I think Godwin will be really popular. He was popular last week once Antonio Brown was out. Especially on FanDuel where he was, I think 6-7 last week and just everyone played him there and he got there. He had a lot, his best high scoring game of the season with Antonio Brown being out. And then we've got the annual battle of Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore, kind of going on. They're fun when they play each other, man. I mean, even Monday night was fun with Lattimore and DK. Those two dudes put on a nice, fun little show as well. I mean, but Mike Evans, I mean, he's been kind of wrecked in these games. He has one monster game on Lattimore to at least let you know that he's capable of doing it. He had 7 for 147 and 1 in one of the games that they had against him. But we've also seen Evans shadowed twice this year by Trayvon Diggs in week 1, and we saw him get shadowed by Darius Slay on Thursday night 2 weeks ago. And those are by far his worst games of the season. So if the Saints do come out and deploy, Marshawn Lattimore on Mike Evans, you might see something similar and just a lot of targets naturally flock towards Chris Godwin and maybe even a little bit of Tyler Johnson.
Tyler Johnson was in on a season high 73% of routes on Tom Brady's dropbacks in place of Antonio Brown. Only saw a 5.5% target share, just 2 targets. But yeah, if they're not throwing,
the other 2 guys are eating.
Right. Yeah. They Godwin and Evans accounted for 60% of the Bucs targets, 21 and 35. So but in this case, if they're not throwing in Evans' direction because of Lattimore, we may see some more targets for Tyler Johnson, another cheap option on DraftKings if you want to go that route. Also, rumors that Gronk will be back. And if so, I don't mind squeezing him, in double stacks with Chris Godwin if you want to go that route as well. Even if he's limited, they're going to have him out there where it matters most in the red zone. So I think he's a good play too.
You mentioned Mike Evans. Reminded me, we're contractually obligated to give our opinion about him giving the football to a fan and what would you have done and why was this guy wrong? Why is he a big dummy? Does anybody have a take on the 600th football pass touchdown for Tom Brady?
I would have to go get my roommate to yell about it.
What is Silva's take?
No one.
Is he angry?
No one wants to start more fights talking about that than Silva, who is very happy for the guy and will fight you if you have any other opinion besides being happy for the guy, which, by the way, is the right opinion.
I also have a Silva update. He texted me during the show and wanted me to let Daigle know the dishes are not going to do themselves.
I was listening to a Silva podcast and he was talking about he was throwing shade your way, Daigle. I think he said you never cook. I think is that you somebody was asking about, it was a big night for cooking, and I guess you're not the cook of the household.
It's been a busy year. Have been cooking less this year. I will say, if you want to transition this to the Silva story, of the week.
Sure, go for it.
Chris Allen of 4for4 came to visit Chicago over the weekend. Great dude, very good friend. And Blair was also, or I should have said his daughter's name. It's his daughter's weekend as well, to stay here. And so she was like caught up in the storm that is Alan, Silva, and Daigle, and like a few friends over, like the neighbors and whatnot, because the neighbors had their kids over as well. But when everyone left, Chris and I are still up having a few drinks still. And then we just hear footsteps running, jumping down the stairs. And it's 2 a.m, 3 a.m. And then I look over and Blair's like laughing. And I was like, 1, you're supposed to be asleep. 2, what are you laughing at? And she goes, Daddy just ordered 36 pints of ice cream. And I said, what is happening in this household right now? And wouldn't you know it, literally 30 minutes later, 6 bags get dropped on the doorstep at 3 a.m. And so I go outside and get them. And then I hear the bigger footsteps of the Silva household coming downstairs. And it's 36 pints of ice cream with frozen Snicker bars and frozen cookie sandwiches as well, all delivered at 3 a.m. He eats a quarter of 1 pint and puts the rest in the freezer.
What was the emergency that you needed 36? Was there a deal or something on DoorDash? I have so many questions. Why 36? Did he buy them from Costco?
You learn in this household that those questions are better left unasked.
Where do they go? Where do they get stored?
In the freezer.
I mean, they all fit?
Yes, they all fit because this household also lacks in groceries because I'm not cooking much. So
it all comes back.
Yeah. All you got to do is like move the Terramana bottles out of the way and then stuff the ice cream in the rest of the freezer.
Those are our 3 games we're going to feature. We're going to run it back and talk about our favorite plays at each position. Before we do so, we want to shout out our sponsor, Jock Market. Jock Market, stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. Buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit bonus up to $50 using the promo code Grinders. That's GRINDERS. Get this now. If you do not turn a profit this week, Jock Market, they're going to cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market on the in the App Store or in Play Stores. Check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com. Use the code Grinders for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. All right, Daigle, quarterbacks this week that we're going to talk about that we've not yet featured. Herbert versus New England. Stafford once again in a game where they should route somebody in a dome. Big time favorite. We touched on Jared Goff, the possibility of Tyrod Taylor coming back at 4.9K on DK. And then there's Jalen Hurts, who just always finds a way to get there. A matchup against Detroit. Maybe he'll actually score points in the first quarter and the second quarter against Detroit. What do you have for Daigle? Those kind of quarterbacks, and anybody else want to add to the conversation, feel free to fire away.
Well, it's a slate where we're asking who can match the ceiling if Josh Allen were to go off. And so that, of course, does all lead back to Matthew Stafford. Darrell Henderson also, Matthew Stafford and Darrell Henderson, like that's the way I look at this slate. Like these are the 2 biggest key pieces, especially after Darrell Henderson didn't get there, but all the peripherals were amazing. Even in handling 18 of 20 backfield touches last week, he just didn't score. And we're also seeing more targets solely as a wide receiver, like a split out running back as well the past 2 games. Now they're just using him all over the field. So I don't really even think it's about like if you want to roster Matthew Stafford, of course you do. It's about getting creative with him, which is why I talk about the Rams as a whole now, because you don't have to have a run back and you can still play Stafford, Henderson. You can go Cooper Kupp, of course, who's averaging more DraftKings points than Derrick Henry now. And then also, like, if you want to just sneak in some other players, it's Tyler Higbee, who, without Johnny Munt, we saw have a season high target share. He just didn't get inside the end zone like as much as he should have. And then also Van Jefferson, season high in snaps and season high in routes run in his first game with more 11 personnel as well. So overall, like, you could still play Stafford despite what the ownership says. It's just a matter of what else you do with him. I think it becomes a weekly topic, especially in a Rams situation like this one.
Rich, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I like to play all the Rams players. They're going to score a lot of points. I feel really good about all those takes. Yeah, I love running Darrell Henderson back to
take.
Yeah, listen, that's you come for top level analysis like that in this show. Yeah, Houston's 30th in rushing points allowed to opposing running backs. 5.2 yards per carry. That's also 31st. 30.4% of the fantasy points they have allowed in the season have come on the ground, which is also 31st in the NFL. So I do love the Darrell, flop lag spot as well. You keep playing Cooper Kupp. Yeah, I mean, all those guys. I think Brandon Cooks with at least Tyrod coming back is interesting, especially more so on a site like FanDuel where he can kind of get there in one play. Like FanDuel's been really kind of coy with Brandon Cooks' pricing all year. He's only $6K flat. So he does present like at least a nice cheap bring back too in that stack if you do want to bring him back. He's still accounting for 30% of the team targets, 49% of the team air yards. So I do like him as well in that one. And I like the Higbee call as well. He's super cheap as well. Yeah, that all sounds good.
The point was, before these smartasses said something, is you can play 4 Rams. That is my point. You don't have to stick to double stack. You can actually play 4 of them and feel safe.
I mean, the cool thing about just onslaught, you're just gonna go crazy onslaught. If you go small field, you could do it. You go small field, if you get the game right, you're gonna smoke. If you do it enough, if you do it in a small enough field, if you're wrong, you obviously aren't gonna win any money. But it isn't. You can get away with it in a small field. If you're gonna play like the 222 or something.
One of my lineups last week, one of my main lineups, my thought process was, my cash game lineup was, well, I'm just going to have all the Rams touchdowns and play Stafford with Henderson. And I thought that the distribution would be a little bit different. Henderson.
And you did. Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, well, Henderson didn't do anything. Yeah, I mean, there was no Sonny Michel touchdowns to my recollection, or any defensive touchdowns or anything like that. But by the way, side note, was there no defensive touchdowns last week? Does anybody remember this? Because I feel like I don't remember seeing one. Just maybe, at least in the main slate.
Oh, that means they weren't on red zone at least.
No, red zone, they show every touchdown, no matter how meaningful that may or may not be to the game. They make sure to hit up. They know who's watching. They know it's the DFS guys and the fantasy guys. How dare you?
I can't think of any. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't recall, because I remember thinking that as like the slate was about over, and I'm like,
which is even crazier because the Bucs still scored like 20 fantasy points.
Yeah, they still crushed, but I'm pretty sure there's no defensive.
I mean, all the teams got there last week. The Packers got there, except for the Cardinals, right? Like, I mean, they were fine, but like, that's the thing this year, right? Like, is actually paying for defenses is like one of the leverage points of fantasy DFS this year, because everyone's just punting.
Yeah, and you got Tampa versus Jameis this week too, and people probably going to play it because I'm assuming Tampa's too expensive. I've not looked at.
The Giants last week too. They were the cheap defense. They had a zillion points. They had a safety. There was a bunch of safeties. Didn't that game have 2 safeties?
Yeah, there was at least one. Yeah, of course that game had 2 safeties.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of safeties going on. There was 2 games that were like 5-3 at one point. The Cardinals game and the Giants game were both 5-3 at one point.
I need a Jalen Hurts take against Detroit. And there's also some rumors out there that he might get benched. Is that happening? Is that for real? Or is that just people talking nonsense on Twitter? I
don't know. I mean, listen, I've had a little bit of inside behind the scenes in that organization, and everything I've heard about is that they've never really been keen on him. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but it shouldn't happen. I mean, first of all, there's no reason for them not to at least see this thing through and see how things are last year. I mean, Jalen Hurts he occupies none of the salary cap. He's a 2nd round pick. He still presents the most upside if he's right. We know what Gardner Minshew is. Ben Baldwin even put a chart out today. You can find it in his feed that shows, quarterback performance, completion rate over expectation, and EPA per play on the first 400 plays of a player's career. And Hurts is ahead of Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew's a fine backup. He can win you games for a stretch of the season, but we know what he is. Gardner Minshew's built up a ton of cachet because he seems like a really cool dude to drink light beer with. But like he's a very, very average quarterback. Now we don't know
drinking light beer, is it? He's not drinking light beer, Gardner Minshew. I don't think.
Yeah, he drinks like Beast, like Milwaukee's Beast Light.
He would be a natty
dog.
Sure.
Yeah, Milwaukee's like natty. Yeah, natty light. But we don't know if Hurts is a good quarterback still. But he at least presents the most the highest range of outcomes for a ceiling potential if it was to work. Also, not as a complete defensive Hurts. They've had a really bad schedule. And like the last 3 weeks, they faced 3 of the better pass defenses in terms of fantasy points allowed so far this season. This week, he gets the Lions, who are 32nd EPA. Like, let's give it this week and see what happens. Him versus the easiest spot that he's had all year against this Lions defense. So, I mean, he's a guy.
His line's been rough too. Like, his offensive line's been banged up. The rushing game's been missing.
He's indoors in a dome. Let's see what goes. He does present a lot of upside. He's gotten there. Now, this is probably a game, like you said, it won't be like a hair on fire situation, right? Like, it's like he's going to need points before the 4th quarter in this one, because the Lions aren't going to be like up 20. And if they are, then something really bad happened for him, for his outcome.
That was the game last week, by the way, for Dan Campbell to show up and cry about, because They threw the kitchen sink at him. They just went down the line and said,
They just kicked too many field
what's the
goals.
bingo
That's
call?
what. I mean, if you cash in a couple of those red zone drives, they kicked 4 field goals. Like, they stole possessions, but they didn't finish them with touchdowns. There was one walk-in touchdown DeAndre Swift had, which I would have loved because I was way in on DeAndre Swift last week, where he ran like an option route and him and Goff got crossed up. It looked like he kind of got flat-footed for 1 second, Swift, and Goff threw it. He would have walked in for a second touchdown of the game. But I digress. But I do think that Hurts is kind of fun because I think we'll see Goddard I think Goddard's going to be really popular on this slate. We saw in his first game without Ertz, he played 93% of snaps, he ran a pass route on 88% of the team dropbacks. The Lions, awful defense, 29th in yards allowed per target to tight ends. I think he'll be popular. Don't overlook Devontae Smith, though, in this game. We've had to fight through some quarterback volatility with him, but, he's still getting, 7.6 targets per game. He's got a 23% target share. Detroit is allowing 11 yards per target to opposing wide receivers. They've allowed a 52% completion rate on throws downfield. That's 28th in the NFL. So don't overlook Devontae Smith either. He did miss practice today with what appears to be headaches or migraines. So keep an eye on that. It's early in the week. But I do think that Goddard will be popular. He'll be a popular play.
Chat's talking about, we got Grandpa Steve talking about Mike White, the quarterback in the chat. I thought Mike White was the guy who wrote The White Lotus. Like, he was in like a School of Rock or something. Different guy, different person, apparently. Cincinnati defense. We don't talk much defense this week, but I guess that's probably going to be fairly popular. I've not seen the price yet, but this guy, Mike White, there's no
Western Kentucky's finest, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is that? Who is he competing against? Who is the second most finest at Western Kentucky? I don't know.
They got a dude throwing for a bunch of yards this year, Zappy. He's got a bunch of yards. He's got a great name too. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. That's how it looks to me phonetically, and it sounds really cool in my head.
I don't watch a lot of college football, but I'll take your word for it. And I'm excited for him to enter the draft. Hopefully he's a top prospect. Daigle, you got anything else as far as quarterbacks, or shall we talk about some RBs?
Nope, we can move on to RBs.
Rep Sam Darnold, Daigle.
Yeah, Henderson. Go ahead, just run them off.
The fact Sam Darnold is averaging 6.5 yards per attempt from a clean pocket the past month, that's not good. So unless you want to sell me because he's not throwing good, whether he's under duress or a clean pocket, Reeves, or if you're just trying to call me out from picking up Sam Darnold and starting him in our main event team last week, then we can move on.
I mean, I think that the Panther stack is interesting this week. I don't know how if it's going to make my core when we get down to it, but I do think that they're very interesting. They've just been getting dragged. Darnold has not played well, but I mean, this Falcons team does not rush the passer, and they just give up plays in the passing game, and no one's going to want to play these guys. You heard Dean. I mean, listen, everyone's done chasing the ghost and Robbie Anderson, whatever. But I mean, DJ Moore is a guy that I think is very interesting this week, even if you don't land on Darnold, which I totally get. But I do think DJ Moore is interesting, at least in that matchup.
Oh, I'll be back on Robbie Anderson. I'm a
you got to see it through. You got to see it through at this point.
I was going to play.
I'm martingaling it, right? Like I'm pot committed. He's $11 on Yahoo. I don't know how much you guys play on Yahoo. It's $1 above the floor. 4.7 DK, 5.7 FanDuel. Look, you don't get any fantasy points for air yards or targets and all that kind of stuff, but like it's at some point, and now it's in a dome against Atlanta, and this game's got like sneaky shootout potential. It's a nice little game to game stack where nobody's really that expensive. Oh, I'm going to play some Robbie Anderson.
I was going to get behind Robbie Anderson again this week too. I'm just going to chase it till it happens. Till more than 11 yards and a touchdown happens, I'm going to play him.
I should have yielded the pitch to you. I don't want to be the guy on record like advocating for Robbie Anderson.
Well, we talked about a little bit about Miami and Atlanta last week, and that game got there. I mean, Atlanta's playing a lot better offensively like the past month. And they're going to force them. And Panthers are going to keep throwing it because they can't run the football. Actually, neither of these teams can really run it well. And we've also seen Cordell Patterson, like he's actually being used the way people thought like he would be used in year 2. Remember when he was like that high draft pick after his rookie season? He was taken like the 3rd or 4th round. They're using him everywhere, and they're using him just as like a complete running back. But last week he plays 21 snaps as a running back. He's out wide for 17. He's in the slot for another 8 snaps. Just a complete master of none type of player. And he just completely out touches Mike Davis coming out of the bye 16-4, and going into the bye he had more rushing attempts. And it's like it's kind of happening for Cordell Patterson. Like we keep waiting for, everyone keeps on to say like it's not sustainable, but they just keep giving him more and more. It keeps expanding his role.
Daigle, you a fan of Cordell?
Yeah, his receiver routes go up every week, but it's not sacrificing his usage as a running back. They're just adding more to his plate. So he continues getting more and more touches as they decreased Mike Davis. They said today, following Mike Davis's 4 carries, a season low 19% share of the team's backfield touches, that using Patterson more this past week was due to game script. But also, like, the Falcons are a bad team. The game script most of the time is going to be, we got to stick Patterson here because we need explosive plays. So yeah, like, I don't think we're coming back from Mike Davis. Like, I think it's all Patterson.
The presumption that Miles Sanders is out. Well, what's your thoughts as far as that Philadelphia backfield?
The game script in this particular one doesn't work in favor of Kenneth Gainwell. It's like the one team they can play and be neutral or have a lead. And so Kenneth Gainwell, I do trust, even in running just 3 more routes than Boston Scott this past week in the interim, out touching Scott 9-8. I think in a neutral game script, like, there's a real possibility Boston Scott has dropped in as Miles Sanders in like the first month when they were still splitting touches and Gainwell was coming in more on 3rd down. So I think Gainwell is the more explosive player, but also, like, I don't really know if, like, this is the game I'd want to choose between one or the other.
You like the running back on the other side, Swift?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, always.
Matched his season high, 21 touches this past week. We've seen his usage continue to grow the past 4 games as well, as they have phased Jamal Williams out of the offense more and more. And it's still all DeAndre Swift in garbage time and into the game. So yeah,
DK finally bumped him up. I mean, I write this article that talks about pricing every week, and DeAndre Swift was in there on the DraftKings one literally for 7 straight weeks where he was priced, and they finally at least priced him up. So hopefully he doesn't pop up into the article this week.
What happened to Henderson? Henderson went down. I know he had an off week, but he went down $100 against Houston. And
yeah,
I mean, how do you not go back to him? Of course,
I play him every week.
Play him every week. It's just a question of what you do with him in tournaments. But like that price for cash, he's like the first person you put in on DK. I mean, look, it's Wednesday night, but I feel pretty confident in saying I don't know what scenario is going to play out where he's not in my cash game lineup, because that's just a goofy price. What else do you have for me, Reeves, as far as running backs? Mixon versus the Jets, one of the worst defenses on the board, just bleeding fantasy points to running backs. Who else out there catches your eye?
Yeah, opposing backfields are averaging 36 touches per game against the Jets. They have, trailed by double digits in 68% of their offensive snaps this season. So they've just been in game scripts that just invite teams to just keep giving the ball to their running backs. Comparatively, the Tennessee Titans lead the league in backfield touches per game on offense with 34.3. So you're essentially getting Derrick Henry usage for the opposing backfield every game against the Jets.
That seems good.
Yeah, I mean, like I saw Daigle had a tweet earlier in the week, though, about how the Bengals have rested Mixon in the 4th quarter of the past 2 games. Maybe that happens again here, too. Obviously, if they do rest him, it's because they're up to a huge lead. He probably was part of the beneficiary of that. So that still exists. He looks good. Burrow looks good. I like that. I really like the mini stack of Nick Chubb and Chase Claypool or Deontay Johnson if you choose to pay up. You can even do Pat Freiermuth if you want to chase the targets, although the routes still weren't there. I see him as a real popular pickup, but there could be more routes coming out of the bye. There was no increase on like his routes per drop back though, just the targets were there. So it's just something kind of to earmark, but I do like obviously Claypool where he's priced on both sites. Because he wasn't particularly good in the Sunday night game, but the targets and the prayer yards were there. They are prayer yards again from Big Ben because he's connected on just 4 of 12 targets over 15 yards downfield with Claypool. But I like the upside against that Browns defense because the Browns are really good against the run. They're going to force the Steelers to kind of play this, passing game that the Steelers are willing to play. And I like Nick Chubb kind of coming off of with the Q on his name that he'll have all week. No Kareem Hunt. I imagine Dearness Johnson is going to be involved, but to the degree of Kareem Hunt was, I don't think that that's probably going to happen. I mean, last time we saw Nick Chubb without Kareem Hunt, he played 74% of the snaps. He averaged 52% of the team touches and 12% of the team targets before Kareem Hunt came back from suspension in 2019. In his games played this season comparatively, he's played just 52% of snaps per game, 35% of team touches, and 3.6% of the team targets. Those are massive differences for a guy that has the talent of Nick Chubb. I mean, really the only bugaboo we've ever had with Nick Chubb is just the touch counts because we know he's hyper efficient. If we run into some games where now he can start flirting with 25 plus touches, I mean, I'm going to hope to sneak him in this week and see if no one gets on because of the Q tag.
Also, Nick Chubb on DK was at 7,600 before his injury, and now he's all the way dropped down to 6,500 for no good reason. Maybe they priced him because they think the Steelers defense is still a scary unit. So Yeah, I like Nick Chubb a lot. I also like James Robinson. He's 8,200. Robinson is on FanDuel, but only 6,600 on DraftKings, which is absolutely insane. Recall before the Jaguars went on bye, Robinson handled all 20 backfield touches, 100%, and Carlos Hyde was active for that game. So still very confident in James Robinson's role, especially since Seattle is being just run over by running backs. This isn't just Kamara. Think back to the week prior, Najee Harris had 120 yards and a touchdown. We saw Alexander Madison go nuts. We saw in week 1, both Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines got there. Like, they're allowing 9.9 yards per catch to opposing running backs in the passing game. So like, there are multiple ways James Robinson gets there. So like, he's as much of a lock as Darrell Henderson, in my opinion. And then a sneaky tournament play. It's such a good matchup for Teddy Bridgewater in the passing game. Getting Jerry Jeudy back, maybe getting Albert O back. Washington, as we know, has allowed a top 12 performance to opposing quarterbacks in 4 consecutive games. That I think it is a good game script for J.D. McKissick on DraftKings. His salary dipped $300, or it's $300 less than it is on FanDuel for some reason. Even though DraftKings is the place we would want to play him, he also has a double-digit target share in 4 consecutive games. So I kind of like him as well.
Yeah, Seattle has been getting absolutely crushed by running backs. I mean, they have allowed 5 top 12 scoring weeks in 7 games. In the only 2 weeks they didn't allow a top 12 score, they allowed 145 yards and 2 touchdowns to the Rams backs in the Thursday night game. And the other one was week 5 when they allowed 90 rushing yards to Trey Sermon, which basically all came in the first half before the 49ers stopped running. They've been getting absolutely crushed.
They can't sustain drives. Geno Smith, he's the ultimate game manager, right? I assume. That's even probably rounding up on him. When I say the term quarterback game manager, what's the word association? First person to pop in your head. Who is it?
Tom Brady.
Yeah. I was going to say Drew Brady. I was going to say Drew Brees, then Tom Brady.
I was joking.
Wait, game manager is like a guy you don't trust. Unless I have a different term in my head. It's the guy you can't, like, he's just going to hand the ball off. And if he has something.
Oh, we saw Keenum game manage the hell out of Thursday night.
There you go. That's a good game manager for sure.
No turnovers to hand it off.
Yeah, Alex Smith is the guy.
Yeah.
Alex Smith, Jeff Garcia. I don't know why he pops in my head for no particular reason.
Oh, Jeff Garcia had an awesome year though, man. Like, yeah,
Jeff Garcia,
when he had T.O., when he had T.O., Garcia, he had some, and he ran around too, man.
I was thinking Cleveland Browns, Jeff Garcia.
Oh, well, that was, he was pretty bad.
I don't know why. That's what
Jeff Garcia was closer to Taylor Heineke than a game manager.
Yeah,
Trent Dilfer. How about that one? Does that one work?
Yeah, he was a game manager. Grossman that year was the game manager.
Let us know in the YouTube chat. There you go. In the comment section, give us a
Tell us who is a game manager.
Yeah, please.
Tell me why.
No.
Give me the reason why. The first person to pop in your head, not the second person or the third person, the first person.
Jameis Winston now.
Yes, Jameis Winston now. Geno Smith now. Oh man, they don't even let Russ cook, like a real live good quarterback. Like they're just frightened to let him throw the ball, and they won't be able to sustain drives. I wouldn't think. They are playing Jacksonville, but
poor Tyler Lockett, man. The first 2 games of the year, this guy comes out and has 100 yards, and then he just evaporated.
Teddy Bridgewater in the chat. There it is. Teddy is a good answer as well.
Yeah,
Teddy's
a good answer. Yeah,
that's the shock.
Also, like if you play James Robinson, like. You can maybe argue DK Metcalf. Geno Smith has had it tough in 3 games that he's played. Like he's played some good defenses. This is by far his softest competition. And like, although I believe Lockett has been failing because it always came down to efficiency between those two, Lockett and Russell Wilson. Like DK is still getting there on talent. Like I understand a majority of his production was on that 80+ yard touchdown this past just last night, but overall
he's capable of doing that. Like
absolutely, that's what I'm saying. So you can easily play him because no one's going to play him. They're just not going to want to play Seattle receivers, and DK Metcalf is talented enough where he should be in your pool of skinny stacks.
I don't know if I can do it. Oh man, Garoppolo.
If you do Robbie Anderson, you could do DK Metcalf.
Oh man, well it's a different salary, but yeah, if it's the same price for a Metcalf, sure. Herbert's not a game manager. That's insulting. Herbert's a good. Come on. All right, let's talk about some receivers, some tight ends. We'll go step aside and get out of here. We're taking up enough of your guys' time. We're over an hour, I think, at this point. Thanks for sticking with us. We do appreciate that. Hribar, what do you have for me as far as some receivers? I know we've touched on some along the way. Who's popping for you this week?
I like Cortland Sutton to kind of slide through this week. Daigle kind of vouched for Teddy, but I like Sutton because Judy's going to come back. And, historically, off of Judy's injury, the first 1 to 2 games back show a 20%, an average of 20% decline in production. So, I don't want to chase Judy that much. He could still get there. He's a talented player, but Sutton's going to slide through, especially because he's right around the same price as Chris Godwin too. So he's a kind of a natural pivot at 4:00 if people are going to be pivoting to Godwin, because if you're 1:00, hits didn't fail. So I definitely like him. He's the same exact price as Godwin on DraftKings, and he's $100 cheaper on FanDuel. So the natural pivot point. Washington has been absolutely terrible on vertical targets, and Cortland Sutton second in the NFL in air yards per game. Washington's allowed a 53% completion rate and throws over 15 yards downfield. That's 29th. They're 31st in the NFL in fantasy points allowed on those targets. So I do like Cortland Sutton as kind of a guy. You can play him in stacks, you can play him as a one-off, but I like him to slide through this week too.
All right, Daigle, some receivers.
Yeah, we touched on DJ Moore a little bit, who still continues leading Robbie Anderson in targets without Dan Arnold and Christian McCaffrey. Touched on Deontay Johnson a little bit, who has seen double-digit targets in every game. And I do also like him in a skinny stack with Nick Chubb, just because there's nowhere else for that offense to go, even if Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry are eligible to play. And then, we already touched on Van Jefferson as a cheaper option to triple stack, to onslaught with the Rams offense. So really, I think just naturally throughout the show, we just touched on the guys I was also going to play.
Yeah, I just see Brandon Cooks as well as guys that's popping as well too.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks looks good. We talked about that as a bring back. What about do any of you guys like Keenan Allen this week coming out of the bye?
I like the Chargers.
Brandon Staley kind of mentioned that they want to be more aggressive on early downs, and the Patriots are actually number 1 in the NFL in points allowed to opposing wide receiver ones. They've only allowed one top 12 scoring. It goes to obviously the CeeDee Lamb game, but Jalen Mills was actually on CeeDee Lamb in that game. So do they take away Big Mike? Obviously, you're not going to take away Keenan Allen where he runs his routes. So I do wonder if Keenan Allen coming out of the bye, given the opportunity he's had, is going to be in a spot where he'll go under a look too as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, who do we qualify as wide receiver 1 on the Chargers? Yeah. Is it Allen? Is it one?
Well, I mean, perimeter wide receivers.
Oh, so that's how we figure it out. All right, fair enough.
Well, sorry. Yeah, I mean,
they'll both won't be rostered in this game, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know if Eckler is going to get much play either, too. But
he's in a great. Eckler looks really good too, because the Patriots, they're another team that had just been giving up bundles of production yardage to running backs. The Jets had 175 yards last week. Dallas 182 the week before that. Houston running backs had 111 against them. Tampa Bay 163 yards against them. New Orleans 145 the week before them. Eckler looking pretty good too.
Eckler's in a sneaky spot too, because he's only $1K cheaper than Derrick Henry, and so I assume everyone will just say I can just get a K more and get the Derrick Henry on DraftKings, and so I think Eckler's great leverage in that situation.
I think people will want to play Damian Harris. Obviously, the Chargers are getting run on by everybody. The only thing you worry about Damian Harris is that what his role is in the offense in the game script. If somehow Mac doesn't punch back or Herbert's on a heater, you see Damian Harris still only has 10 catches, and Brandon Bolden's still running all the pass routes. So that would be like the one way, because I think if Damian Harris, that's the one fade you have on Damian Harris, right? If he ends up being,
he's not the catch-up guy, right? If the Patriots are down 2 touchdowns with like 10 minutes to go, Bolden's out there, correct?
Yeah, well, from a pass route percentage, it was the first game Bolden hit as a pass catcher, but he's been in the James White role. He's been running the pass routes in that offense. So if Damian Harris ends up catching steam because everyone wants to play guys against the Chargers, and Damian Harris has been good, legitimately good, that's your out. Is if the Chargers go up, we could see just not a lot of it.
Do you need to see Stevenson not playing?
Who?
Stevenson, does he have to be a scratch? Like, what if he dresses? Then they have Bolden, they have Taylor as well too. I'm just trying to think how many.
If he dresses, I still don't know his role. That's the issue. I wonder if he would even have a role. Bolden actually, since taking over for James White in week 4, he leads running backs and targets inside the 20 as well. Like, he is literally playing the James White role.
All right, let's knock out some tight ends and step aside and get out of here. Hawkinson, since his injury or whatever injury he's had, he's kind of sputtered the last so many weeks. People keep playing him and he keeps popping in optimals, but I don't know. I'm not privy to the medical, his medical is, but it doesn't look great. I'm guessing he's not feeling particularly well. Maybe he bounces back and crushes versus Philadelphia. Goddard, we talked about in the same game, the other side is popping for sure. Higbee against Houston for sure. And then there's Kyle Pitts, who's crushed the last couple of weeks, and he's got a nice matchup at home versus Carolina. Oh, I guess the Hunter Henry revenge game is the thing too, I suppose.
Well, the thing about Pitts though is that just like last week, whenever Pitts was the pivot, because Calvin Ridley came in over like 20% more rostered. Now it's going to be Calvin Ridley's the pivot because everyone's going to chase Pitts. That's just the way it's going to work. It's like last week. I wish I would have known that. I would have thought about this beforehand. Like, even if you look to a recreational term like the Millie, Mike Evans was 10% rostered and Chris Godwin was 32%. Like, that's the perfect like DFS dream. It's like, oh, I could just one off one of them. I don't even have to have Brady. I can just play Evans and easily get leverage. I kind of think that's how Ridley over Pitts is going to work this week.
Yeah, Evans was like $600 or $700 more, I think, than Godwin. Yeah. That's obviously was what dictated the ownership there. Your thoughts here, Hribar, as far as some tight ends?
Yeah, I mean, those all sound pretty good. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that we didn't bring up. We even touched on Freiermuth a little bit. So, I mean, that covers just about the rest of these guys. I mean, if you want to keep playing Ricky Seals-Jones.
I got one for you.
Yeah, hit us.
Dan Arnold's 2.8 on DK.
I knew you were going to say it. A little cheapy.
Yeah.
We've seen the last 2 games. He has played 65% of the team snaps, but also like Jamal Agnew's kind of taking away his targets. Like Jamal Agnew's slot rate has increased the past 2 games without DJ Shark, and he's seen 12 targets in that span. So now there are just a couple players to get targets over the intermediate level of the field or shallow. And so like Dan Arnold is very cheap. I agree. But I don't know, like, cause there is more competition now in that range of the field.
Is the floor basically 0 on Arnold?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
he'll get you like 2
0,
like 2 for 20. He'll get you 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't necessarily completely blow up your lineup if like, your 2.8 tight end gets like 4 or 5 points. Like, that's not necessarily, it's not always about what they do.
You already told us you're going 100% Mike Gesicki.
Well, yeah, I was trying to force you to say him and you refused. Eventually you just gave in like, is this what he wants me to say? I like Gesicki. What do you want from me? But yeah, not 100%.
Do you think right now, do you have Gesicki projected for more ownership than Tyler Higbee?
I don't even know if we have projections ready.
I know that's fine. I know Higbee's going to be steamed by the end of the week. Like, he's not going to be like a single digit guy. He's a pretty awesome
but
player. He's
gotten steamed before though, and he hasn't gotten there. So like, he might not complete. I just mean, people are going to play Goddard. People are going to play a ton of Goddard.
And the other thing about ownership, by the way, I don't want to say it's worthless because we do offer it at RG. It's worthless on Wednesday night, basically.
Yeah.
But it's nice to look at and kind of
as is everything we do.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in every week.
Hey man, listen, we were on the Burrow call last week at this time. No one wanted to do it.
Whenever I saw Burrow go off, I was like, I knew you had a good day. I didn't even text you because I was like, I know Rich played him. I couldn't get there in my single entries, but I just kept on coming back to like Jamar Chase, Marquise Brown, skinny stacks. The issue is like I had a lot more T Higgins, but totally get it. Yeah, when I saw Burrow go nuts, I was like, Rich had a good day. I knew it.
Let's appease the question in the chat. Let's see if you guys have somebody on the ready. Brandon Reed's asked, this is the benefit from listening to us live. A lot of people listen to us in the replay, obviously. Brandon Reed, he wants to know the best flex play this week on FanDuel as of Wednesday night. Give him somebody, Daigle.
Among all of them. On FanDuel, I bet even Austin Eckler isn't that highly rostered. So I'll go Austin Eckler.
See Austin Eckler and raise him, Hribar.
Yeah, I think if you're going by pricing, what you can fit in your flex, you have Austin Eckler, James Robinson. Then I think you have Chris Godwin. I'm running the salaries in my head. Cortland Sutton and Keenan Allen, and like order pricing. So what you can fit in. I like all those guys.
There you go. We gave you a plethora of options to consider there. And you can put him in like your regular slots too. You can just build a lineup of those guys basically.
Yeah, but we want to have those pivot. We want to have that flex for when our 1 p.m. Sam Darnold stacks don't hit. We want to be able to move that salary. When Robbie Anderson has 12 yards on 15 targets, we got
a late swap.
We got a late swap.
I will be in the box of shame if that happens once again. Good Lord. Oh man. Does anybody have a couch I can crash on? Because Robbie Anderson is going to put me in the poorhouse. But what is it? The air yard model, the buy low. I assume he's in it. I did not look at it today.
He's probably been redacted already, but
he's got to be in it. He's like in the Hall of Fame of the.
He's there every week, baby.
Oh boy, begrudgingly, I'm sure he's popping once again. Thanks for we're ending on a high note here. Robbie Anderson talk. Good times for sure. Appreciate y'all watching. Do like, do subscribe, find Hribar's content, find Daigle's content. Let's make it easier for him, Hribar. Tell them where they can find you.
Listen, sharpfootballanalysis.com, at Lord Reeves on Twitter. The worksheet's up every Tuesday. You can read it. Gets updated throughout the week. You can always find me Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern with my boys, Daigle and Dean.
Daigle, give the same thing. And also next week, can you give us an update on the ice cream of those 36 pints? I want to know how many are do accounts before the show. I want to know how many survive up till next Wednesday night.
Well, I'll probably have to take out some of them, to be honest. But nonetheless, I'll update you on the ice cream. I won't tweet it at not J Daigle, though. I'll update you here live, and then a good football show wherever you get podcast at. Also, this Saturday from 4 to 5 Eastern, I will be co-hosting on Sirius XM Fantasy Show with my friend Brian Drake of the Fantasy Hustle football show. And we're bringing on a couple guests. We got a couple guests planned, surprise guest, but I just need to basically change my routine up because I'm already tired. So it's time to jump on the radio like I dreamed of when I was 13 and have some fun and host that circus.
Awesome. Enjoy. Have a good time with that. With that said, thanks you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, notifications, all that good stuff. That was Rich Hribar. That was John Daigle. That was football. That was the NFL Pick Six Show. I was Dean. Thanks for watching. We're out of here. Holler.